Thank you for joining us. You may be wondering if you can actually homeschool, or you might be in the middle of a really hard time and you're trying to figure out how to keep going. Well, we're going to tell you how to face your fears, overcome challenges, and love your homeschool experience. I'm Sunny. I'm Sonlight's community manager. I'm also a Sonlight mom of two children who have been educated entirely with Sonlight. And joining me today are Anne and Amber. So ladies, let's start with some introductions. Tell us a little bit more about you, Anne.
Hi, my name is Anne. I've been homeschooling for 15 years now. I have a son who will be attending college this fall and a daughter who will be a junior this next year. And I'm a mentor on the Sonlight app. So you'll see me there, and I work at some conventions around the country. So if you have a convention near you, yeah, look out for that. They're great.
Well, thank you for being here. Amber, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Amber Severance, and I have 5 children. 3 of mine have graduated from my homeschool. 2 are still at home. I have a junior at home and a 6th grader at home. My oldest 3, my oldest daughter just graduated this past weekend with her MBA, and my other daughter is currently in college, and so is my son. He'll be a junior next year. I have used Sonlight since 2002. All 5 of my children, their core subjects have been through Sonlight, and I think I've done almost every level Sonlight has to offer. Like Anne, I am also a mentor, and I will see you at conventions.
Well, thank you both for being here. Let's go ahead before we dive into this topic. We really want to encourage people and let them know they can homeschool. But I know when I first started out, I would see homeschool moms that seemed like they had it all together. They had always known they wanted to do this. So let's kind of talk about what led us to that place where we started homeschooling, and then what made you think you could do it when you started out.
Anne, you want to go first? You want me to go?
Yeah. Well, my background is I used to teach high school biology before I had kids. And so I just always figured that, I would stay home with my kids when they were young, and then I'd go back to teaching when they went to school. But all of that completely changed when my son turned 2. I didn't even have my daughter yet, but he turned 2. And it just hit me that I knew I wouldn't want to send him away. I just enjoyed what we had together. And I'll be honest, I love the flexibility of our schedule since I wasn't working full time anymore. And I just didn't really want to have to be tied down to that schedule anymore. And then when my daughter came along, I realized, she naps in the afternoon, and she wouldn't get her nap if I had to pick up my son from school. And this just cannot happen. So all sorts of little reasons, just from wanting to be together to not wanting to mess up my daughter's schedule as she's growing up. And the other thing I felt pretty strongly about was, I guess this is my type A personality coming out, but wanting to kind of, I chose his doctor, I chose my son's, the different things we did. And I just wanted to choose what we did for school, and got my hands on the Sonlight catalog and never looked back.
Yeah, I have a similar story to Anne's in that I was a teacher, junior high and high school teacher at a pretty large Christian school in San Jose, California. But I thought that homeschooling was a little odd. And at that time, that was the early 1990s. And I thought, why would anyone homeschool when you could send your kids to a great school like I'm teaching at? So I did not willingly come to homeschool at first. I thought that it was probably not something I was going to do. I would want to continue being a classroom teacher and a coach throughout. But then I had my first baby. And like Anne, as she started to get older, I thought, I don't want to send her away. I don't want her to be away from our family and under the instruction of someone else for 6 to 8 hours a day. I just realized how fast that was going, and she seemed so little. I was scared to death to have lower elementary children to teach. So I know some people get scared that they aren't going to be able to handle the high school years. I thought, oh, maybe high school will be fine because I had been teaching high school. But teaching my daughter to read, that scared me to death. So I do want to say that Just because Ann and I both have schoolroom experience doesn't make us better homeschool teachers, because the two don't really combine. It's very different to teach in a classroom than it is to teach at home. So I would say that if you say, well, all right, Amber and Ann both taught in school, so they know what they're doing. That's not the case. I have met homeschool moms who I think do a way better job than I have done. And they did not go to college for education, and they did not ever have classroom experience. So that is not necessary. Don't let that discourage you in any way.
Right, absolutely. It's funny you bring that up, because when friends of mine, they of course knew I had been a teacher and they found out I was going to be homeschooling, it was, oh, that's so cool. You can do that because
Yes.
you're a teacher. And I'm
Yes.
thinking, I taught 120 high school freshmen biology. How does that qualify me to teach, like you said, my child to read and to teach all these lower levels? It has nothing to do with it. My classes in college taught me how to manage a classroom full of kids, and that's not what homeschooling is about at all.
True. Very true.
Well, it's funny that you guys say that. Yeah, because I did not come from a teaching background. And actually, before I had my own children, I was not a huge fan of kids. I was never that, warm, fuzzy, oh, I love kids type of person. So I think people were shocked, that I even had children, let alone that I wanted to homeschool them.
Yeah.
But I say that I was an accidental homeschooler. So growing up, I was homeschooled for 1 year, but I also went to private school. I went to public school, and I graduated from a public university. So I had done a little of everything, and just assumed, since I had gone to school more, that I would also put my kids in school. But when my daughter got to kind of that preschool age, we happened to be moving, and we weren't sure where we were going to move to or what school district we were going to be in. And so, I was like, okay, she's only in preschool. Why don't I homeschool her for preschool? And then once we settle into this house, wherever we end up, I'll enroll her in school. Well, we started with Sonlight. She learned to read very quickly and was loving it. And at that point, I thought, well, if I can teach her to read, I guess I'll keep going. And so here we are 10 years later. Now I have another child who has also done Sonlight all the way. And, now it's like, nope, I'm never turning back. And I tell everyone I know how amazing homeschooling is, but it was definitely not my plan or anything I thought that I would or could do. So let's kind of talk about those common fears. I know a lot of people worry that they can't teach, or maybe that their kids can't learn from them. They're worried about socialization if they're home all the time. How do you address those types of fears and know that you can keep going, or, that everything will work out and it'll be okay?
Yeah, the thing about, I can't teach, I didn't, get a degree to do that or anything like that. Like we mentioned before, homeschooling is just totally different than any kind of classroom setting. And with Sonlight in particular, it's completely planned out for you. And that is one of the things, when I knew I wanted to homeschool, but I knew what it took for me to plan my biology class that I taught. And I really thought, how can I come up with everything? And of course, that's before I saw that Sonlight catalog. But once I came across that, I had a couple of thoughts. I thought, well, wow, this is all planned out for me. And then number two, it's literature based. And we're already reading books together and coming to the realization that that's what school can be, is reading together and discussing things together and learning together. I just fell in love with it. And so with Sonlight, you don't have to prepare lectures or anything like that. You're just sitting on the couch reading books together. And it's just a fantastic way to do school. So that's what I like to let people know. It's not like you're teaching, you're not going to be going into a classroom full of 20 kindergartners. You got your kids that you have at home, and it's a totally different situation. So you absolutely can do that.
Yeah. And I remember early on, we took our oldest, I went and visited a preschool classroom just because I thought, well, maybe we should, consider this and whatever. And so we sat in the back, and I watched this lovely trying to get 15 4-year-olds to hold their pencil the right way and to have their page. And I sat back there and watched as they tried to get all 15 kids on on the same spot on their page, right? And you're going around, it took probably 15 minutes just to get this group of kids with their paper in the right spot and their pencil being held the right way. And I sat back there the whole time and thought, surely this is just such a waste of time, right? So then when look, you know how to hold a pencil. You can teach your child. It's okay. You can help them hold a pencil. Here's your page. Here's what we're going to copy. It's all right there. You are smarter than a fifth grader, no matter what you may think. You're smarter than your kindergartner. You can teach her, and there are her or him, sorry boys. You can teach your children. And in the time it takes is so much less. You can get her on the right page and have her do her little handwriting and still have tons of time to do many other things. It's just, boy, I think on those early years, you're giving them such a gift, like Ann said, to sit and read. And Sonlight, yes, has it all planned out. I thought I really wanted to read books to my children. I want them to enjoy learning. And Sonlight did all of that. I didn't have to reinvent the wheel. It's someone who had put it all together for me. And also, if you're nervous about any of this, there are so many helps. You are not going to have to do this alone. There are lots and lots of helps.
Absolutely. Another issue that people are a little bit afraid of is a socialization issue, because that is one of the things that people will bring up. If you do bring up that you're considering homeschooling, are you just going to be by yourself all day? How are your kids going to have any friends and things like that? But to me, it's kind of a myth, that the only way your kids can have socialization is to be in a room with 20 other kids their same age. And so what I've been able to see throughout all my years of homeschooling, going to park days, going to different activities, you have multiple ages of children that are cooperating, playing together, and learning to be around each other. And I don't mean to be stereotypical. I love the public school kids I taught. I loved, teaching them. But my son, he really has seen a difference. He was out at the ball field. We were watching a friend's son play a ball game, and there were some kids on the empty field that were just throwing the ball around. So my son goes over there to play with them, and it's all different ages and everything. And he came back and he said, those older kids were kind of, bullies towards those younger kids. And so when you're homeschooling, you can really cultivate the respect for other people, other ages. And it's perfectly normal just to be around all different people all the time. So socialization really isn't an issue. And your kids, they join you when you do everything. You go to the store, so they learn how to interact with the cashiers and the people that work at the store. You go out to restaurants and they learn how to, everybody can do that. But people have waitresses have commented about my kids and how they are really social. And so it really is a myth that that's a serious issue for homeschoolers.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. My kids, both of them, are very articulate, outgoing. They're able to talk to adults, because like you said, they go to the store with me. They see me interact with other people, and so they kind of learn that passively. And then also there's so many homeschool opportunities as far as extracurricular activities. So whether that be sports or music, drama, whatever your kids are into. I think when I started homeschooling, I was worried that those opportunities didn't exist, but there are so many homeschool options for kids where they're not going to miss out on any of that. Like you both stated, Sonlight makes it super easy. The instructor's guides really hold your hand along the way. You may know something, but you're not sure how to teach whatever that is. But I feel like the IGs make it super easy. And I always like to remember, before your kids go to school, if they go to school, you've taught them everything they know anyway. So whether that's, feeding and dressing themselves, using the toilet, all of those things, you're already teaching your children that. So don't forget about that. Now, what about if somebody is going to pull a child out of school that's already been in school and now they're going to start homeschooling? what types of things do they need to do to make that a successful transition?
You know, one thing I would say is, especially as the mom or the dad, whoever is the main teacher, to be patient, right? I think there will be a transition time. So don't expect your child to bound down the stairs and jump to the table and be excited to do school. You know, there's going to be a transition time. And if your child is happily transitioning to homeschooling, the transition might not be as hard, although they might be surprised when there's actually schoolwork to do. You know, we can't speak to every situation, right? You're going to have kids that love, just appreciate so much the transition, others that it's a struggle. I think it's really important to have open communication, like, here is why we're coming home, here's why we're doing school at home, and it's going to take some time. But just like having a newborn baby in your house, you know, things aren't like normal for a few weeks. I think giving yourself a lot of grace. So I know, Sunny, that's not like a super practical thing, but it is a philosophical thing. Like, you need to give lots of grace to yourself and to them. And I think easing into it a little bit and sweetening the pot, making it, having some rewards and having some fun things planned, maybe after we get to a certain point. Maybe it's taking a trip so that they see, oh, because we're at home, we have the flexibility to do some things that we couldn't do when we weren't at home. So that's one thing about the transition. Make sure you give yourself grace. The other thing is your expectations. Homeschool doesn't look like a traditional classroom, and that's okay, and that's good, and it's all right. And yes, learning is still happening. Yes, it's still happening. Just because it's not in one classroom sitting behind a desk doesn't mean that learning isn't happening. And that is the goal, learning.
Mhm. Absolutely. I agree completely what Amber said about communication. And typically, you know, as the parent, you've done all this research, you've picked a curriculum, and then all of a sudden, you know, your student's going to jump into this. So absolutely communicate, you know, let them, it depends, of course, on their age, but you can let them know, you know, why you chose this curriculum and what the expectations are. You know, your school day will look totally different. You don't have to be doing things from 8 to 3, and just talk about the schedule, maybe even depending on the age of the student, let them be part of making the schedule.
Yeah.
Would be really good. And I just totally lost my train of thought. I apologize. I was going to say something
Well,
else.
no worries. If you think of it, let me know.
I'll think of it in a minute, I'm sure.
Because I also have, I had been attending school, and then when my parents pulled me out that year that I did homeschool, the biggest transition for me was not taking tests. I was very much the kid that liked making good grades, and I was competitive with, you know, the other smart kids in my class, you know, and I always wanted to make good grades. And then when we came home to homeschool, it was a very interesting transition of, oh, now I'm learning just to learn. I'm not competing against anybody. And so that was a huge change for me. And then another thing, I have very fond memories of at lunch every day. My mom and I would watch an I Love Lucy episode while we ate lunch. So just a rerun that was on in the middle of the day, that when I was at school, I didn't have that chance, you know, to do those things. And so that was kind of our fun little tradition while we were homeschooling. And so now anytime I see I Love Lucy on TV, that is what I think of is our homeschool lunches.
Oh, that's great. Actually, I remember what I was going to say, but first, talking about the TV thing, watching the show, for a long time at our lunch break, our computer's in the kitchen, and we'd be eating lunch and the kids would pop on the latest Dude Perfect video, and we just laugh and watch that together at lunchtime. Okay, I do remember now talking about, it's going to look different to your child. Of course, my children have always been homeschooled, but I'm kind of the one that had to make, you know, some mental adjustments, you know, coming from public school teaching to homeschooling. And we'd be sitting on the couch reading a book together. And all of a sudden my son would just get up and walk into his room. And I'm like, oh, great. What in the world is going on? I've got to have a talk with him about how that's not respectful. When we're sitting here, we're doing, you know, do you have to be here? But then what he was doing, he ran to grab another book because something that we were reading, he remembered something in this other book. He went to share it with me. And so And so along with that, it just looks so much different. My daughter would always be working a puzzle, doing something with her hands. She never sat next to me for read alouds ever. She was always doing something with her hands or laying on the floor. And she did gymnastics for a while, so she might be upside down somewhere, but could always totally listen. So just keep in mind that homeschooling just looks completely different than a traditional classroom setting.
Yeah, and I love that part of and when you said your son ran to get the book, I love that about homeschooling, that you have the opportunity in the moment to explore, right? And so then your schedule gets shifted a little bit, and depending on how many kids you have. So when I had 4 that I was actively schooling and they were all under the age of 9, we didn't go explore spontaneously often, but now I'm in a position where I can do that a little more. And so my youngest and I, excuse me, might be reading something, piques our interest, we jump on a YouTube. It's incredible how much we learn, or go grab a different book, or have a conversation. It's just so wonderful. And so I just love it so much. Or we'll just run outside to find, the bug or the leaf or the flower or the rock or the plant, whatever it is that we've just read about, to try to look at it and see, oh, that is really, yeah, it's just so rich and full and wonderful.
Yeah, and you both have talked about, kind of those rabbit trails and that flexibility of schedule, that you're not locked down to all day. What are some of the other advantages to homeschooling, whether it be, in the relationships you build, or being able to take those opportunities to learn more? What do you guys think?
There are just so many, but I would love to highlight this one. I love that my children's curiosity does not get pounded out of them. So I have my kids' friends will come. So what are you learning? Well, I got to be on my test. Okay. What are you learning? Well, I mean, I'm doing really well in this class. Okay. Like, so hard. And then watching my kids, even when they go to college and they see, oh yeah, like you show an interest and you get teased a little bit, right? Like and so I'm so thankful in college, my kids have been able to handle that, brush it off, whatever. But I think as a middle schooler or a high schooler, I don't think it gets brushed off easily. And so you learn pretty rapidly that if you are curious and you ask questions and you're interested, that's not a positive thing. So I love in a homeschool environment that you can be curious and learn, because God has given us our brains and we are supposed to use them, and we're supposed to fill them with knowledge and good things. And so I know that's a little bit like the rabbit trail thing, but not. I love that homeschooling gives an outlet for that curiosity. I love that.
Absolutely. And when you're homeschooling, you never have to ask them, like you said, what did you learn today, or how was school today? And I think the typical answer would be, oh, it was fine. And that's all you get. But when you're homeschooling and reading all the books together, you kind of, you develop these relationships and kind of some, inside jokes even, that nobody would ever get because of what you're reading together and learning to do together. And I mentioned this before, but coming from such a rigid schedule that I was on it was only 5 years. I taught public school for 5 years, but the schedule is so rigid. And so one of the, I think that a great benefit of homeschooling is the flexibility that you tend to have. Just being able to go on off-peak season vacations. And, I always taught, like my first biology class was, we had block scheduling. So it was 8 to 9:30. I never, ever had a schedule like that with our homeschool. We didn't ever start any particular subject at any certain time. I have to end it at any certain time. You can completely have it be very natural. And you just create more of a lifestyle of learning. And Amber mentioned this too about the grades. And I did experience this in my teaching job, where some students would not turn in something, or they wouldn't do something if it wasn't for a grade. And from the very beginning, I did not want that kind of attitude, to be associated, with doing things like that with learning. So I didn't keep grades at all until my kids got much closer to high school. And, then you got to start dealing with the transcript thing. But it's totally doable. So that's one of the other benefits, is that you can truly learn, because that's your job as a student, is to learn and investigate and do all these things without having to be concerned about memorizing a bunch of things to pass a test or whatnot and then forgetting it all. And everything just sticks with you so much more, learning it in a more natural way.
Here's the other thing for me, the benefit. I really wanted my children to be educated from a Christian worldview. And that was incredibly important to me. We did not feel like we had the money to be able to send our children to a Christian school, or a school that we felt would share our values and share our worldview. And I would even like to use that word worldview even more than values, because I just think it's an important distinction. So you're approaching the world from a certain viewpoint. I wanted to teach my children that same worldview. I also wanted to introduce them to other worldviews. I wanted them to be able to think through that, but I didn't want someone else choosing, especially people who I knew did not share my worldview on any level. And to send my children, especially my young ones, for 8 hours to other people who did not share my worldview on any level was unfathomable to me at that point, and still is. I don't, that's not what I want. And so I do want to just challenge about this. They grow up so fast. I have 3 that have graduated. I blinked my eyes and they're gone. And I am so grateful to know that during those really formative years, I was presenting them, hopefully in an attractive way, the same worldview that their dad and I hold dear because of God's word.
Yeah, that's so true. And I know now that my oldest is in middle school, I really see that in that she'll come to me if she has a question about something, whether it be, a news story or something she's heard from a friend, she comes to me and, well, what do you think about that? She's very open. I don't remember being that open with my parents at that age. And I would hide stuff, or, I just felt awkward with my parents at that age. And she really, comes and asks, and, well, what do you think about this? And what should we do about this? And so much of that, I think, is because we've had these conversations. She knows what her dad and I believe. And we've had that since day one. Plus, she doesn't have the influence of classmates, like you said, kind of squashing that, curiosity, or, oh, it's bad to talk to your parents, or, any of that influence coming from school. Something you said, Anne, too, about your daughter like laying on the floor or doing school in all different positions. That's another thing that I think, forcing especially young kids to sit in a chair, all day and learn is very challenging. My son is my wiggly one. And he almost never sits down while he's doing school. And so I think had he been in a classroom, he would have been in trouble for, disruption and things like that, as opposed to learning where in our homeschool, he can learn the way that he learns best, which is moving around or coloring while he listens to things and stuff like that. Let's talk about, though, overcoming those challenging seasons. So you might have been going along great in your homeschool journey, and now, it feels like the rug's been pulled out from underneath you. How do you get through those situations?
Day by day. My son, I think he was back in the 2nd grade or so. And I just remember having a really tough week. And I honestly can't even tell you why. Maybe he had a bad attitude this week and school was really hard to get through. I honestly don't even remember, but I remember thinking, I don't know if I can keep doing this. And I got online and I looked up our local private Christian school and saw the cost. I thought, well, all right, that's not going
I can
to
do this.
So we have to make this work. And so we just got back to it and just taking things one day at a time, take breaks when you need to, slow down when you need to, reach out for help when you need to. And then one thing is to set goals. When my son, we talked about holding pencils before. When my son was in preschool, that was honestly my goal for him, was to, have a correct, pencil grip with his handwriting without tears preschool, and just maintain that correct grip. He was a lefty. I'm not a lefty. I don't have any lefties in my family. I don't even know where that came from. But that was a goal I had, and we did accomplish that goal. So keep in mind what you want, to see happening. I think especially when it comes to teaching things like, reading and writing that are really skill-based, and every child has their own timetable for when they're going to do these things. And you just look for progress, that's just so important. Well, one of the struggles that we had, and this may be related to that tough week, because I remember getting on the Sonlight forums and asking this question. I was like, my son, he can't, this creative expression assignment is so hard for him. He can't get his thoughts on the paper. Well, how old is he? Well, he's in second grade. Like, oh, okay. Well, you serve as a scribe for him until he's ready, because basically I've been reading these amazing books to him for so long. His vocabulary is amazing. He can think about all these things, but to get those thoughts on the paper is a totally different story. And when some fellow Sonlight moms told me that, it just kind of had this weight lifted off my shoulders. And so he told me what he wanted to write. I wrote it. And we did that for 2 more years, until he was about in 4th grade. And then he was able to start writing his thoughts down as he was thinking them. And so things don't always work on the timetable that you think they will when it comes to learning these things. So adjust, ask for help, slow things down. We do talk about how quickly it goes by, but there is a lot of time, between kindergarten and your senior year. And there absolutely is time for them to be able to do all those things.
Yes, I think that's so good. And I think one of the things that was so hard for me, and I'm going to guess it's hard for a lot of moms, is we are a little bit impatient. And we, especially with our first, you look at them and expect them to be these full-grown people. You don't realize how young they are. So I think a really helpful thing is to maybe do a little looking online or at some books, if you still like to go to the library and look at books this way. But what are developmental milestones for different ages? Because sometimes our expectations are really a little bit too high for where a child is. And if you have a child who excels from the time they leave the womb at a lot of things, and then you have one that's just a little more normal, you sometimes think, oh no, what's wrong? Like, everybody's supposed to be like this one who's doing this. Well, that's not true, but you don't know because you don't have a comparison. So I think that's a really important thing, to take it a year at a time. We had a challenging season. One of my sons did standardized testing and did very poorly in one of the math sections, and poorly enough that I thought, you know what, I think I need to switch math curriculums for next year and redo that year, which I loved that I was homeschooling and could do that without any stigma to him. So that is a really cool thing. And you know what, we redid that year. He didn't learn a ton, but we got our facts down a lot better, and things smoothed out. He is now in college and doing business and finance and has to do accounting and stuff. So his math skills are okay. He's not Einstein. He's not going to get a PhD in math, but he's fine with math, and he's doing great. A 1 year, a challenging season is not going to make or break your child. And depending on what the challenging season is, golly, they can learn so much by watching you handle whatever the challenging season is. It might be the death of a close family member. It might be something very personal. I know our oldest daughter had a very challenging season, and school looked a whole lot different for an entire year. But by God's grace and his mercy, she is, still doing well and did great in college. That 1 year, no, because it's okay. There will be challenges, there will be things, but even if they went to school, a traditional school, there would be challenges and there would be things. So that you're there though, for the challenging seasons, to walk with them and to help them.
Absolutely. That's so important. We had a challenging season a few years ago when my mom was very ill and she passed away. But my kids were able to see, they saw the church come together to help a family that was in need. My dad was not lacking for meals whatsoever. This is 2 hours away from where I live. So my kids, they were 7th grade and 9th grade at the time. So they were old enough, to be at home and do certain things alone. They just saw a community come together to help us. And that really was an amazing thing. And it is true, they didn't really do math without me. So we didn't finish math until the summertime, but that's okay. That's okay. If things get totally thrown off track, it is all right. You will be able to, pick up the pieces later on. And you'll be able to get through it, but your kids will see good things happen even through the challenging times.
And maybe, Sunny, after 2020, we all know that traditional school can have a challenging and be interrupted. And actually, maybe the homeschooling is the space where you don't have to have the same kinds of challenges, right? So it's a
well, it is funny that you mentioned 2020 because that was my son's kindergarten year. And he did not learn to read quickly. It was a struggle even in our homeschool. And I just every day think about, oh my goodness, if he had been in school, he may not know how to read now. Because he's very quiet. I can absolutely picture him being the one that would sit in the back of the classroom and not ask for help. And so I thank God that we were homeschooling at that time, and that, my husband was also working remotely. Now he does all the time, but at that time he did not. But COVID was what sent him home. And so he had both of us here to help him. And that was actually the catalyst for really allowing my husband to teach a lot more now than he had before that. And that is something that we love. I love for the kids to hear his perspective on things, and he's having a blast. He'll read something to one of them and say, oh, this is so interesting. I didn't know that. So it's really become a full family homeschool experience now, which I love that. But I think something that I like to remember when I'm facing a challenge, especially, is that, why am I doing this in the first place? What is it that I am hoping to accomplish? And is that still better than, whatever I'm feeling right now, right? Because feelings are temporary and I might feel overwhelmed. I might be stressed about whatever is going on. But at the end of the day, I have seen the fruits of homeschooling in my kids. And would I want to take that away? Absolutely not. And so it gives me kind of that push to keep going. And then, like I said, during COVID, my husband started helping teach. So, that takes a huge weight off my plate if I am busy or stressed, because he now jumps in and teaches too. So with a literature-rich curriculum, grandma can read a book to the grandchildren, or, there's a lot of people that can help out. Older siblings can help out. So really rely on your network too of, people that can help you teach. But ladies, what would you say your top tip or encouragement would be? For somebody going through this? I just kind of shared some of mine, but what would you tell them if they could only do one thing? What would it be?
For someone starting, brand new with homeschool, my number one tip is to take it very, very slowly at the beginning. Even just starting one subject a day to get into a routine of what it's like to teach that subject the homeschool way, and then gradually pick up your pace.
You can homeschool. My top tip, use Sonlight. No, I'm teasing. that really was a lifesaver for me. But also, daily, it is an everyday. This is, if you've decided to homeschool, it is your job. For those hours that you're homeschooling, that's your job. Treat it. If you left the home to go to a job, to work for a lawyer, whatever, that would be your focus for those hours that you were at work. Let that be true for homeschool. Not that there aren't interruptions and all of that, but what I'm saying is sometimes I think we feel like, oh, I'm homeschooling and everything should just fall into place. Well, it doesn't. It does take work. It does take faithfulness and commitment. So I think that dailiness, like all of life, asking God for wisdom and help for each new day and tackling that day with a good attitude, hopefully.
Yeah, your attitude really sets the tone for your homeschool.
It really does.
So that's a huge point. Also, if you need help from Sonlight, we love to help answer your questions and offer encouragement. The mentors and myself are in our Sonlight app, so you can post any of your questions there. You can get ideas from us, from other Sonlight parents, also on Facebook in our Sonlight Connections group. We do also have our advisors available too. So if you need help identifying what curriculum to use, or you have questions like that, you can absolutely reach out to them as well, and we'd love to help you out. But get plugged in, get connected with other homeschoolers, and that way you can hear and learn from those who have been there before. It does make it so much easier when you see, the light at the end of the tunnel. There's other people who have done it successfully, and you can too.
Right.
So ladies,
That's
thank
right.
you for joining and sharing with everyone today. I really appreciate you both.
You're welcome. Good to be here.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll cut it there for the session. That was good. We only went like 40 minutes. So.
All right.
Maybe 45, but yeah, close. So that was good. Okay,
Wow.
so we'll do the promo. So yeah, Anne, since you're on top, I'll just have you start. Hi, I'm Anne, and then Amber. Hi, I'm Amber, and then I'll wrap us up with the rest of it. So whenever you're ready.
Hi, I'm Anne.
Hi, I'm Amber.
And hi, I'm Sunny. You may be wondering if you can actually homeschool, or you might be in the middle of a really hard time and you're trying to figure out how to keep going. Well, we're going to tell you how to face your fears, overcome challenges, and love your homeschool experience. Join us to learn more during Sonlight Connections Homeschool Summit 2022. A better homeschool experience awaits. All right, so that's it. So I know I've got both of you